Hello, everyone. This is Mike from Dimensional Walking, and today I want to talk about an interview that I had done about 14 years ago with a gentleman named Norio Hayakawa. And Norio is a great guy. I've known him for at least 14 years. And so we sat down, we had a little jasmine tea and cake, and we talked about UFOs a little bit, Robert Lazar, Dulce, and other paranormal things. And this is the first time I had met Norio. Eventually, Norio would become an active member and a founding member of the group that I ended up leading for about 8 years, called the UFO Paranormal Forum of New Mexico, or New Mexico UFO Paranormal Forum. And so, let's talk a little bit about that interview. So Norio, by trade, was a Spanish teacher. I believe he was a Spanish teacher here in the United States. I think he lived in California for a long time, if I remember correctly. He's originally from Japan. So, anyways, one of I guess a little bit of the claim to fame was that Norio would go to Area 51, and he would kind of lead a bit of a demonstrations out there to get to the truth. Maybe at the gate, he would get there with some signs and some people that he was familiar with, and they would do a little bit of a protest, just trying to get the government maybe to shed a little light on what was going on at Area 51. So one time, he had a pretty good relationship, my understanding, with a Japanese TV. I think it was Nippon. It's a TV network in Japan, and apparently he had a relationship with them, and he had brought a film crew to Las Vegas. And in Las Vegas, they ended up having an interview with Robert Lazar. And I think most of you probably know Robert Lazar. He was supposedly an engineer that worked at Area 51 that helped reverse engineer UFO vehicles. And of course, that's a whole tremendous story in its own right, so we're not going to go into it here. But you can Google Robert Lazar, and I think you'll get all kinds of really crazy and wild information about him. Anyway, so Norio brought this film crew there, and they went to this location, and Norio described it as being, it looked like it was kind of a vacant house, and basically they just threw together a kind of a couple of pieces of furniture in a room, and it looked like it was just kind of all done a few minutes before they got there. So they sat down and they talked, and I'm not going to go through all that. I've mentioned in some other videos on Dulce that I'll let you know at the end of the video of this video. But anyway, so he talked to them. He interviewed them about his reverse engineering of the UFOs and everything else that he wanted to talk about. There were some really interesting things, though. He said that two men came in with him. I believe it was like one on each side of him, and they let me see if I can, where I wrote this down. Reported that two strange men with weird black devices attached to their side, almost if they were robots or men in black, that accompanied Robert Lazar. And so he thought that was really odd. They just kind of were robotic in many ways, and Lazar kind of gave his interview, etc., and then they kind of got up in unison and left, if I remember that part of it correctly. But he thought it was very odd. It sounds odd to me. So then what Norio did is he, I don't know if it was a few weeks later or a couple months later, but anyways, he decided he was going to go, because apparently Robert Lazar had told him of this place called Dulce and the underground base. So that was some of the information that Robert Lazar talked about at that initial interview. So Norio went ahead and brought the same film crew to Dulce, New Mexico. And so here comes this film crew, Japanese film crew, obviously not looking much like the people of Dulce, New Mexico, who are pretty much the whole community is in the middle of the Apache a nation up there, the Hickory Apache Nation. So they pretty much stood out like a sore thumb, basically. And they would kind of, I think as Norio described it, possibly a Wild West town on this reservation. And I've been there several times, and I totally agree. Generally speaking, the people are very nice there, though. So apparently, him and the film crew were around asking all kinds of questions about UFOs and the underground base, etc. And suddenly, a guy named Hoyt Valarte shows up, and he was the police chief of the town. And he didn't really, like strangers coming around and asking questions about this underground base that was on the reservation or just north of the reservation. I think part of it is actually on it, and the other part may possibly be in the state of Colorado. But anyways, he didn't really appreciate that. Also, the rumor goes is that eventually he got a little fed up with it, and he kind of put them a little bit in confinement, I guess we'll call it, for a short period of time. I guess in a weird way may have stirred a little international issues because they took this Japanese film crew and kind of put them in, took them to the police station and kind of put them in confinement. So anyways, I thought that was pretty interesting too. But one of the things that apparently Norio did spend, and the film crew did spend about 3 days there. So eventually, and they did build some pretty dang good relationships, including with the police chief and some of the other townspeople there. And he uses that later. Interesting enough, Norio did, to when he did his conference there years later, which I was part of. I didn't help a lot, but there were several of us that came up from our group and assisted wherever Norio needed it to keep it kind of going. So anyways, he uses his connections to kind of have this Dulce. It was the first original Dulce Underground conference later on, which I talk about pretty extensively in some of the other videos on the Dimensional Walking channel. Anyways, so Norio took this information he got from Robert Lazar and some of the conversations that he had on the Dulce reservation. He took that back to Japan and put together a very popular documentary on Area 51, Robert Lazar, and Dulce. So that I believe you can still access that if you look up Norio Hayakawa documentary, maybe Robert Lazar and Dulce. I don't have it right on my fingertips, the name of it, but I believe it's on YouTube, and you can watch it. And I remember watching it years ago, and it was pretty amazing actually. And so I just want to let you know, I've always felt that Norio was a very sincere person, very knowledgeable, and he was very real. And like I said, we developed a relationship over 14 years or so, even to this day, even though I don't live in New Mexico anymore. And the group itself still exists, the UFO, New Mexico UFO Paranormal Forum. It's led by Richard Smith presently, but it's still a very active group that brings in speakers from all over the Southwest and other parts of the country to speak about UFOs, paranormal type things also. So one of the last things I told Norio in the very end was, and I'll say this again to Norio, and I'll say this again to the public. May our fascination drive our journey to the truth. And there is probably nothing more important in that statement, because that's what it is. It's a fascination that keeps on driving myself, and I know Norio, looking for the truth. Because UFOs and Robert Lazar and Dulce, they're all connected, and it's a pretty fascinating world out there. So, anyways, that's it. Again, I have 4 other videos on there with more detail on Norio, the Dulce conference, about Dulce. I think there's a couple comments about Robert Lazar in there also. So, anyways, bottom line is keep on keeping on and checking out the fascinating world of UFOs and the paranormal. And we'll see you again. Please subscribe. If you like us, please like us. And if you'd like to send us a private email, you can send it to dimensionalwalking@gmail.com. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.